We can heal from attachment injury.
Okay, I realize now I have anxious attachment. I have avoidant attachment. What do I do about it?
Well, first of all, you need to know what secure attachment is. A lot of people know about attachment theory these days. I think in a way, you almost need to learn all the languages for each of the attachment styles.
I'm really excited to share Dr. Diane Poole-Heller with you, who is a world expert in attachment theory, somatics, and trauma healing. She helped popularize and teach Peter Levine's somatic experiencing for 30 plus years and has been pivotal in this whole nervous system regulation, somatic movement, and really discovered that, hey, a missing piece of the work is attachment theory, and specifically what to actually do about our attachment injuries or our relational wounds. Well, hi, Diane. I'm so glad you're here.
I'm thrilled to be here.
You're such a powerhouse you've been behind the scenes in somatic work. You probably won't take credit for this, but you've really popularized this field in a lot of ways.
You know, I grew up with a pretty severe trauma history. So as many people that are drawn to being therapists or coaches or facilitators of healing, whatever form that takes, medical or, however that happens, very often we go to the university of hard situations. Then that kind of gives us, hopefully, doesn't happen to everyone, but it gives you the idea that, okay, I need to overcome this, or I need to deal with it, or I need to heal from it, or I need to become resilient around it, or whatever. And then in that process of struggling with that and learning how to do that, then very often there's a feeling of, gosh, it shouldn't be this hard for people. I want to make it easier. I want to, be in the field. I want to help in some way. And that certainly was one of my inspirations. And then, later, let's see, gosh, and it was 1988, so much later because I'm old. It was, I had a near-death surgery and, 3 near-death experiences in like a couple days because everything kept going wrong. 2 surgeries that went awry. I mean, really very interesting experience of things going wrong. And then I got sepsis. It was kind of a mess. But coming out of that, because I thought, okay, this is it, but it wasn't. So coming out of that deep near-death experience, I came back with a very clear mission on top of the one I already had, which was to learn more about love, to learn more about having the capacity to receive love, because I didn't grow up in a loving environment predominantly. So that felt kind of foreign. I almost didn't know what to do with it when it happened, I'm sure some people can relate. And then also to learn how to have that be relevant just in general, just love, divine love, whatever, as a human being, but also then relationally, how do we receive love? How could I receive love more effectively? How do we communicate love more effectively? How do we, express it? How do we receive it? Everything about it. So that became a very strong focus. And that was in 1988 that came in super strong. So that's when I started I had been teaching somatic experiencing with trauma work with Peter Levine for like 25 years. I don't know. By then I had been teaching it, maybe 10 years, but now it's been 35 that Peter and I have been teaching together. But then I realized that was such fabulous work on embodiment and working somatically, and really helped heal trauma in a very powerful way. So I did everything I could to spread the word on that for many, many years, 35 years, really. That's a long time. Peter calls me the dinosaur of the work because I've been in it so long. And then I realized that a lot of trauma was getting resolved working somatically, and it's so important part of what we do. And it felt to me like people often got past their trauma triggers, they got past certain symptoms, they got past panic attacks, they got past anger, they got past shutdown, they got past dissociation, but there still seemed to be this tenacious broken connection, like not a capacity to deeply connect to oneself, and sometimes a big fear about deeply connecting to someone else. And I think it was Lipton that talked about the shortest,
Bruce Lipton?
Not Bruce. I'm blanking on his first name, but I can look it up. A different Lipton, but he said his shortest definition for trauma was broken connection. And I thought, wow, that seems like a really huge piece that I didn't feel like was getting addressed relationally enough post other trauma symptoms, you know?
Yeah.
So I thought I have to bring this in. And I tried to bring it in originally to somatic experiencing, but that was already such a full training. They felt no space for it. So I thought I have to do this. I had a clear calling. I have to work on how to help heal broken connection. I thought halfway through Dan Siegel's Developing Mind book, I was realizing, okay, if I'm going to work with broken connection, I've got to go to the very beginning in utero. What happens when we're developing a relational blueprint? And of course, that took me to attachment theory. And then I dove deep into that and have been in the
prolific,
the major focus on that now for several years.
Yeah, Diane has an amazing DARE training, dynamic attachment repatterning experience. And oh my gosh, it'll knock your socks off. It is such a brilliant contribution to the field. I've done so many different approaches and I've been trained in so many different, especially somatic approaches. But the DARE system is the one I just keep coming back to. That's the main one. And again, I think as we're heading into this new era, like things are going to change here. A lot of therapists are kind of nervous about, okay, what's this AI revolution going to look like? And the DARE program, or the learning to be with somebody in the way that you show us how to be with people, my God. And that's like where it seems like that's where the heart of healing is. You seem to have this intuitive sense, like you put your finger on attachment theory before maybe you kind of.
It was before anybody really seemed to notice much about it,
Yeah. Yeah. And so you kind of figured that out for so many people, like what to actually do about attachment.
Yeah.
And I think that that's so helpful for so many people today, because so many of us recognize, oh, I have an anxious attachment, or I have an avoidant attachment,
right,
but we're not so sure what to do about it.
Right.
And you really provide like what to actually do about it.
Yeah.
So I wonder if I had a few questions of
Sure.
different people from my Instagram following. And one of them was, okay, I realize now I have anxious attachment. I have avoidant attachment. What do I do about it?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the key thing. A lot of people know about attachment theory these days, but I really felt like, okay, how do we heal from whatever attachment injury we might have bumped into or had, And normally, there's a lot of different ways, first of all, that attachment injury can happen. Mainly it's from usually coming from caregiving styles, and attachment's very easy to pass down through the generations. Like we learn how to parent from the way our parents parented us, or, very often we end up saying, I'm never going to do what my mother did. And then all of a sudden we're saying that words are coming out of our mouth, same thing. So it's tricky, but, I believe that most parents are doing the best they can and they didn't have the opportunity to heal. So we're trying to create a opportunity to heal. And often you can also have a mix of attachment styles. So even though you're predominantly one or the other, depending on what relationship you're in, the attachment system adapts. So, sometimes we have a little bit of this or that, but we might have a main focus. So I'll address what that might be for those that you mentioned. And the other thing, is I really want to underscore this is it's a very hopeful message, because the attachment system operates, it's very strong. I mean, I think of it as an instinct, as strong as the survival instinct, the instinct to bond.
Totally.
We have a pro-social brain. We have a nervous system that regulates a lot by co-regulation through connection. So it's a big part of our human existence, our human life, So getting good at it, or learning to recover from things that were disappointing or hurtful, can just give us so many benefits and so many gifts the rest of our life in all relationships, especially our intimate ones, especially in our parent-child ones, but also coworkers and strangers, and just being a reasonably well-balanced and well-meaning human being on the planet, which the more the merrier on that one. So I just want to give that overview, and that we can heal from attachment injury. That's the main thing I want people to hear. And it maybe not to 100%, but even if you get to 90%, you're going to be mostly presencing secure attachment. So that's a big deal.
What's so great is you have your quiz on Diane's website. I'll put a link in the description, and you can track your attachment style over time. You can see,
right.
Okay. Oh, all right. I started out a little bit more disorganized, and okay, I'm doing the practices and I'm getting better.
But you ask about what do I do about it, which is really been my main focus, because there's a lot of information and research and all sorts of great information out there on attachment theory. What I found lacking, now this is changing over the decades because I started doing this in the 80s, or the 90s, I guess, early 90s, is what works, what helps healing happen. So I got super focused on that. So there's a couple things. I mean, with the time we have, I can give you a few ideas. Well, first of all, you need to know what secure attachment is, because that's where we're trying to get to. Secure attachment has all sorts of capacities. For instance, being able to create a safe space for someone, your child or your partner, or, whoever that might be, kind of a bubble of safety. And not doing things that are scary in your arguments with your kids or your partners or your coworkers, like not threatening divorce in the middle of an argument, because that's going to trigger attachment injury in spades. So there's certain things you learn to not do, even if you have the.
So don't threaten to leave.
Don't threaten to leave. Don't threaten the relationship. I mean, just try to consider what makes you feel safe and what your partner needs for safety, and to try to stay within those boundaries. Also, secure attachment has a lot to do with play. So have play dates. I mean, here's a prescription. Go play. We work too much in this country a lot of the time. So playfulness and humor and laughter. So watch funny movies. I mean, do fun things. Ride your bike together. I mean, whatever it is. Go on a picnic. Sing Broadway show tunes around the house. I mean, whatever you want to do that's fun, whatever that is. But do that together. And share about it, not just doing it as a solo, that's considered parallel attention, like you're just doing your thing and you're not interacting with anybody. Try to see if you can include the other person or have a discussion about it, or maybe watch a really cool movie, but then go to dinner and talk about, hey, how did that impact you? That sort of thing. Another part of secure attachment is coming and going rituals, because attachment's all about how do we connect, and then how do we disconnect, right? And we disconnect even by going to sleep at night. We're not, we won't be in the same bed, but if we're with our partner, but we're not, engaged in, it's in a certain way. So what are your bedtime rituals if you're thinking about partnership, or you're with your kids or something?
Like have a similar rhythm.
Yeah.
You want to sync up to that.
Well, even like I just met my friend recently in Washington, D.C. that has this ritual with her husband, which I love to use as an example. They both love chocolate truffles. They're both into truffles. So they on their own go buy these different truffles, because you can get them 6 million different versions, right? Yeah. And then every night at 9:00, they put a truffle on each other's pillow, and that's their every night debriefing time. So they get in bed, snuggle up, and enjoy their truffle together. And they talk about the day, like, okay, and they clean up any debris that might have happened in their relationship. Like, I was a little abrupt on this, or I was running out the door and I forgot to ask you about your job promotion, or, something. They kind of clean up anything, but they also share what was most meaningful during the day. And they actually have different nighttime rituals, because one likes to stay up really late and one likes to go to bed early. So they do this the early time, right? And then they do their connection, and then the other person stays up and does whatever they do, works on the computer, and they comes to bed later. So that doesn't even matter about having to go to sleep at the same time. Okay. But they have this. So you could do your own version of that. I mean, maybe it's eating watermelon, or maybe it's, maybe it's reading a book together. I mean, I have lots of couples.
A shared secure attachment space.
Yeah, I have another set of friends in Santa Fe. They read to each other every night.
Oh, that's sweet.
One will read one chapter, then that other person reads the next chapter, and they have this kind of, bedtime story together. And but it's connection. That's the thing. It's easy to do. If I point this out, nobody's going to be thinking, oh, I can't do that.
Right.
I mean, it's simple, but we have to understand how our attachment and bonding works, and then feed it. So this would be like a coming together before sleep, right before a separation of sleep. But the same thing, like in the morning when you wake up, do you immediately get on your device and you're like on? I mean, It's easy to do that, right? But could you instead maybe walk the dog together, or cook breakfast together, or maybe something came up on your feed and you can put it down and talk about it together with the other person. So it's learning how to have joint attention, and devices are fabulous. I mean, we rely on them, we're relying on technology right now, right? So it can be used in a really beautiful way. But there's research that shows that even if you have a cell phone face down, turned off on a breakfast table, it reduces intimacy by 35%, because of just the idea that someone could interrupt the time you're having together. So if you just put your cell phone in a basket, you're, by the front door or something, not having it glued to your hand, like we it's easy to have that happen. They're kind of designed to be a little addictive.
They're so addictive.
Yeah.
And what I'm hearing is ritualizing it can help someone actually do it, right?
Yeah.
So if it's like, oh, you might have the intention to share the space, but you get carried away, you get stressed, and you just want to be on your device. But if you have a ritual.
Yeah. And if you read the book Atomic Habits, which I really like that book, it talks about creating habits that really work to support you, and then you start clumping the habits, so like maybe you have you have to make up your own versions of these things. I'm just putting out some examples, but like maybe when you get in the house, the cell phones before dinner go in a basket, and then, you just create some habits that are human connection supportive that also fit your life, right? So what else is true about secure attachment? Let's see. Protection, being protective of yourself, but also creating protection in your relationships. So if somebody knows that you're going to stand up for your partner, you're going to have their back, that kind of thing is really helpful. Co-regulation, like learning what that is. And so like Stan Tacken has this wonderful welcome home hug idea.
Stan is such a genius. Yeah. What's the welcome home?
Yeah, and that's on YouTube, so you can look that up. But basically, the idea that for some of us might be very new, but is actually very, again, easy to do, is if your partner's coming back from work or you're coming back from work, either way, whoever's at home stops what they're doing, like maybe turns the fire off on the stove if they're cooking dinner, or says to the kids if they're doing homework with them, hey, honey, your dad's here, or your mom's here, or your, whatever. So they stop what they're doing and they actually make an effort to greet the other partner at the door. And ideally, they do this welcome home hug, not this, triangle hug that sometimes Americans get a habit of doing, like tapping you on the shoulder or something, but actually a full body hug. And if you stay in the hug a little bit longer, until you can feel your nervous system regulate. And again, bodies love to be with other bodies that regulate. So if you're having a little trouble in your relationship, sometimes it's as simple as reconnecting on these very basic things. But if you're in this hug, and let's say you have a low back pain, ideally your partner puts their hand on your low back. Or if the other person has a headache, the opposite person puts their hand on the person's head. Really enhances the regulation and embodiment for both people. And that might take 2 or 3 minutes, but it makes a huge difference how you go back to cooking dinner or how you go back to being with the kids or walking the dog or whatever. Wow. And what often happens in relationships when you live together is somebody walks in the door and immediately we start tasking the person. Hey, did you take the garbage out? Did you call the doctor? Did you pick up the dry cleaning? And
hey, sweetie, can you come in here and hear this?
That's not the best way to be greeting your partner. It's not an attachment oriented way. Absolutely. And it's practical. I mean, you might do that after the welcome home hug, but you want to make sure you have a focus and a practical way to enhance your attachment system. And these things are really easy to do once you know about them. And you make them a habit. You make it a practice, and your partner and you agree.
Easy but profound, right? My wife doesn't actually do that, but easy, but it sounds like so profound because you're changing your nervous system state in a deep, profound way with this actual connection. Wow. So what I'm hearing is you learn the kind of language of the attachment system, and you teach that in your trainings. And the behaviors. You learn of secure attachment. And so the healing is dosing more with secure attachment. Yes. And then, so if someone, like a lot of people watching this, probably have a avoidantly attached husband, what are the kinds of things that they might do to be more attuned?
Some practical things on that. This is really a great question for all of you to think about, and I'm glad you guys are asking it. When somebody has avoidant attachment, usually they had a certain caregiving environment when they were younger. And before I forget to say it, you can also have attachment disruptions because you grew up in a war zone, or there was medical issues and your mother had to be separated from you when you were very little, or you had to be separated from them because you had some medical issue, or you were in a marginalized group and there was just extra stress with that. There can be different influences, but for the sake of this time together, we're probably going to talk mostly about caregiving, but I just want you to know it's a bigger possibility.
You talk for days about all this stuff.
I mean, there's so many things that affect our capacity to be in a relationship. It's a very big topic. But with avoidant, usually they were in an environment with a parent that either was vacant, and you see how active babies are trying to connect. They're looking at you and they're gurgling and they're reaching, they're pulling your hair, they're doing everything they can to try to get a connection. They're not passive. Like we used to have this tabula rasa thing, this blank slate. Babies are way more than blank slate. I mean, they're way more
That's
active.
heartbreaking. That we used to think babies didn't have
And
any.
they used to think babies didn't feel pain.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, and they would do things like
terrible.
Even injections without being very careful because they think, well, babies don't feel anything. Where they got this idea, it's like hard to imagine. But anyway, we won't go down
Welcome
that
to the world.
rabbit hole.
Come into the world. And,
yeah.
So open, so sensitive. And wow.
But if you're a baby and you're reaching out and the other person is not there, that's very scary if they're vacant or not present. And sometimes parents are in that space because they have unresolved trauma themselves. So, they're doing the best they can, but they can't show up. And that's terrifying to a baby. The other way avoidant happens, which would kind of be in the category of severe neglect. And the other way is if a parent's actively rejecting, like angry or hateful in the eyes and has contempt when they're changing the diapers or whatever, there's this kind of unwelcoming, the opposite of welcoming actually feels more like an attack. So a baby's going to retract from either one of those scenarios. The third way a person can move into an avoidant adaptation is if the parent shows up, but they're only showing up with left brain activities like teaching you to ride a bike or teaching you to learn to read or teaching you math or teaching you anything. It's left brain orientation and attachment really relies on right brain being involved. And so when that's lacking, which means that a parent's not attuned or reflecting accurate emotional states. And a good example of a healthy reflection would be like, I don't know, oh, honey, I see your brother just broke your toy. I'm sorry. I can see you're really sad. Oh, come here. Let me give you a hug. Well, you will try to repair it, or maybe we'll, find another one or whatever. I'm really sorry that happened. Instead of just like, oh, it's just a toy. Why are you being so upset? And go to your room and cry in your room then. That would be the opposite. That would be the not good intervention. So teaching a correct emotional nuance and reflecting that is how we learn what our emotions are and how we learn it's okay to have emotional responses. And there's a container for them in a secure way. But that didn't happen for avoidant. So if you're in a relationship later on, right, with someone that tilts more towards avoidant, they have come by their behaviors from wound. Right. And understanding compassionately what that is really helpful. So a thing I want to say before we go any further into this is there's research that says 95% of what's going on in your adult relationship is related to your attachment history. And there's research that says 0 of what's going on in your adult relationship is related to your attachment history. Okay. Let's just take the middle. Let's say 50%. I personally think a lot is going on from your attachment history. So probably more than 50%, but let's just say 50% to cut to the middle.
My God, it's just a filter. I see everything. Yeah.
Because we just project.
Yeah.
But if you really understand that a lot of what's your partner's reactions are and what even causes problems in your relationship is not about your relationship now, it's probably largely about what happened with the original relational template. It takes all that blame out of the relationship. It brings a more compassionate focus, much easier to heal if you're not feeling like, you're causing all the problems or your partner's to blame for everything. It takes that whole layer out. And then you can look at, well, how do we bring healing into the relationship? So back to your question about avoidant partner. If you understand that someone that is adapted to avoidant, they tend to only look at the future. They don't usually, they have this adaptation like the past doesn't matter. It's over. It was good enough. I'm not even going to look back there. And I had
a happy childhood.
I had a happy childhood or I didn't or whatever. It doesn't matter. I'm moving forward. Okay. So they aren't that reflective about their history, which might be a little challenging in terms of them eventually signing up to heal their history. There's ways you can get around that too. But the other thing is they dive deep into their isolation because they didn't have the experience of co-regulation with the parent. The parent either wasn't there, was really hateful or angry, so they wants to bond with that, or they only got the left brain support. So they don't really even have a nervous system that knows how to co-regulate. So that's something that they can learn and something that you can start to initiate or at least support or invite, but understand that they come to the relationship without a strong orientation for that. So it's not like they're intentionally being unavailable. They just don't really know physiologically, and they didn't have their emotions reflected, so they don't even emotionally maybe know what their emotions are. They often didn't have their needs met, so they may not either know what their needs are, or they feel like you can't do anything because in history nobody did anything, and they don't know how to have a support system, and so they just maniacally focus on self-sufficiency. And so they have what I call reactive autonomy. They have real autonomy, but they have it's kind of reaction to wound, like nobody's there for me. So if you can heal that part, they can also have their autonomy, which is lovely, but they can also have a support system. They can have deep relationships. So we're trying to bring them into the full sense of moving them back towards secure.
If I can, reactive autonomy would be, okay, nobody, like it's charged with a little resentment or it's charged with hurt. And that's how you would know you're in reactive autonomy versus just kind of a healthy self-sufficiency, or how might you?
I would think that looking at through the avoidant lens for a moment, they didn't have a choice to really be with a parent that was either vacant or super angry. So they fell back into themselves, like the feeling, and it's happened so early, it's unconscious, so they're not thinking this, it's just the way they behave and they didn't do it intentionally, it's just again happened. They will feel like nobody's there for them, and they will feel like their needs won't be met, and they will feel like their emotions aren't honored, there's no space for their emotions, and they don't really question that because it just feels like their reality.
It's just the paradigm they're in. That's just the reality.
They're in that reality.
That's how the world is.
And so they can be the way that can play out in adult relationship.
If I can, reactive autonomy would be, okay, nobody, like it's charged with a little resentment or it's charged with hurt. And that's how you would know you're in reactive autonomy versus just kind of a healthy self-sufficiency, or how might you?
I would think that looking at through the avoidant lens for a moment, they didn't have a choice to really be with a parent that was either vacant or super angry. So they fell back into themselves, like the feeling, and it's happened so early, it's unconscious, so they're not thinking this, it's just the way they behave and they didn't do it intentionally, it's just again happened. They will feel like nobody's there for them, and they will feel like their needs won't be met, and they will feel like their emotions aren't honored, there's no space for their emotions, and they don't really question that because it just feels like their reality.
It's just the paradigm they're in. That's just the reality.
They're in that reality.
That's how the world is.
And so they can be the way that can play out in adult relationship. Not everybody has everything in every attachment style that I'm describing. Somebody might just have one aspect of it.
Thanks for clarifying that.
But like they may look at their partner as, you're so emotional, like what's wrong with you? I don't have all these emotions. And they might like look at that as a critical thing, which is
I'm okay. I'm not feeling
I'm okay. What's your problem?
You have the problem.
And they may also not really, they may be dismissive or kind of abrupt or curt when you're asking for connections or you're asking to share an experience versus them just going deep into their aloneness and their isolation. So here's the thing you need to understand about an avoidant. When they go into themselves, and they do this a lot sometimes, they dive deep. So it's a difference between snorkeling and scuba diving. They go deep. Like if they're in the computer and they're playing video games or they're on porn, I don't know, whatever they're doing, they're in this parallel focus and they're not really interested in sharing that with anybody. They're like, I'm doing this on my own. And if you want to, you're their partner and say, hey, honey, I want to take you for your birthday to your favorite restaurant. They might be because they're so deep into their aloneness, like, oh, leave me alone. I'm busy. They might give you kind of a curt,
might be sharp or
kind of a sharp jab, and here you are inviting them to their favorite restaurant. You're like, what? It really hurts your heart. So the better thing to do, because they need time to surface. Think of scuba diving. If you surface too fast, you get the bends, right? So avoidant, if they surface too fast, they become kind of crabby and irritable. So you might say, hey, honey, I'd love to take you out to dinner. How much time do you need to surface? and they might say, oh, 20 minutes or 30 minutes, you will get a much better outcome. And so they say 20 minutes. Okay, I'll circle back in 20 minutes and I'd love to take you to your favorite Italian restaurant. That's going to work much better because you're honoring the shift. It's a big shift for an avoidant to go from aloneness to connection. Now, when we get to ambivalent, it's the opposite. It's a really difficult shift to go from connection to aloneness. They're opposite that way. But anyway, we're talking about avoidance. So those are some tips. And also to know that your grumpiness, you want to set up situations for the avoidant where you can actually meet a need, so I mean, if I'm in an office doing a session with somebody, I might say, do you need me closer or further away? Or do you need the left or do you need the right? Something really easy. I'll go, oh, I need you a little closer, whatever they say. I will
get them identifying what their needs are.
Yeah. And I will immediately, the important thing is I will immediately accommodate what they say. Yeah. So if it's closer, I'll move closer or, whatever. And then I might actually use that. Yeah. I might say, how is it for you to actually experience you expressing a need and someone actually meeting the need immediately. Yeah. And they go, oh gosh, that doesn't happen very often. So you start to try to build bridges to new experiences that are closer to secure attachment, that are not, replicating the avoid detachment. So those are just a couple ideas.
That's amazing. So you're trying to shoot out, you're kind of trying to send out bridges,
right?
Connection, and then you're trying to kind of make this new world of attachment or even emotional awareness about themselves, make it safe, make it more safe. And so the common thing that I wonder if you want to talk about, but is punishing. So someone's been away, they're on the computer, they're doing their thing, and then when they come out, it's, hey, where the heck did you go? And there can be a kind of a punishing. Right. And so I wonder if you could speak to maybe ways folks can, like as therapists and coaches and stuff, we can do a lot of these things, but would what you're saying also apply to people in a couple at home? And would it,
But even the things I said, you're trying to emulate secure attachment. Now, I do want to say it's not your job in a relationship to be somebody else's therapist in a relationship. So they have to do their own homework. They need to heal their own attachment wound. And you're trying to get buy-in on that. That's helpful. And maybe they'll take the attachment quiz, or maybe they'll read a book on it somewhere, or maybe open the door. But even if they don't have that much receptivity, there is research that shows that if you're presencing secure attachment, so it means your own healing, because we have our own stuff, right, to move more and more to secure attachment. But the more that we are reclaiming that for ourselves, which is good related to your own human growth, whether you're in a relationship or not, or regardless of the relationship dynamic, but the more we can find our way to secure attachment and be in a secure attachment space more and more and more, and show and actually living from those capacities, that takes about a year to a year and a half, sometimes 2 years, for someone to be in a relationship with someone who's predominantly secure to move towards secure. So it takes time for them to adapt. But remember, the attachment system is adaptive. It will adapt to the healthy responses. The great thing about having one partner that's committed and largely oriented in secure attachment is they're constantly, every interaction, they're presencing it in a way that's healthy, and the other person starts eventually to notice that, or eventually to adapt to it. It doesn't happen overnight. But again, I don't want to give out the idea to everyone that they have to heal the other person, because the other person has to participate. They have their own homework to do. You can't do somebody else's homework, but the way you respond is very powerful. I mean, I'm really good at this. I remember I used to do trainings. I'd get hecklers and people that would, stuff like that. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter what somebody says to me. Because I practiced it for like 2 years. I actually had an intentional practice. This is probably an aside.
No, please.
To convert. I grew up with a very hypercritical mom. And so, I had a super ego that was like, on me, but I would, for 2 years, I looked at everything every situation and every conversation of like, what could I say that would be supportive, kind, or empowering? And sometimes I would screw up, and something would come up, and I still do, occasionally. But I'll blurt something out, and I'm like, I want to like reel it back in. But I would go, okay, I didn't do so well there. Or I would say, let me do take 2 on that, and I would do it immediately in the moment. But that's still, you still have done the injury of saying something unkind. But then I'd spend time afterwards going, well, what could I have said that would have been supportive, kind, and caring, and I just did the homework for, literally it took me 2 years. This is not a short thing to really get grounded in how I interact verbally, at least, with that. And then, I've had other practices I had to do because not growing up in a loving family, at least a lot of the time, my husband said to me when I was married, he said, I love you so much, but when I express it, or I'm affectionate, or I say something really loving to you, you just deflect it. And I was like, what? Of course I got mad. I'm like, I do not.
So kind of the avoidant, like, just disrupting my.
Yeah, I was like, it was like, that's mean. I don't do that. Yeah. And then I woke up in the middle of the night and I went, oh dear, I do that because. And I realized he told me how painful it was to him that he would express his love and I wouldn't take it in. And then I realized I was really hurting him, but I was also really hurting myself because I wasn't receiving this actual true love that he had for me. And so then I had to do a practice. I go, okay, I'm going to practice staying present whenever somebody's kind or loving or says something nice, instead of saying, oh, that old thing, or, oh, it's not a big deal. The practice has to be, I have to show up. And that was hard, actually. It sounds like, why would that be hard to stay present for loving stuff? It was really hard, I got to tell you.
Does that mean, I think for everybody, like to feel it in your body? What is it actually like to receive that?
Yeah, take it in.
Can I give it 30 seconds?
What happens in your body? And I think it's hard initially. It got easier. Now it's much, 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 much easier. But it was hard in the beginning because we develop naturally, it's a human thing to do. We develop defenses when there's a lot of wound, and we develop defenses when things are unkind or unloving. And so when love starts to happen, it starts to melt those defenses. And when those defenses melt, you come in contact with the original wound in a much stronger way because you're not blocking it. So I had to process the pain of being in a kind of violent upbringing and a, harsh environment. A lot of the time I had to let that awareness feel it more so that I could open the space and let it go. Move through it, but to open the space where I could actually take in the love, where it wasn't challenging my, melting these defenses.
So as you take it in, it bumps into the wounds, and then the wounds come out. For me, it felt like my skin wanted to peel off as I was coming out of the avoidance. Just like so much pain. But then on the other side, I don't know that I would have been able to wake up my attachment system if I hadn't gone through that, which is kind of the next question I want to ask you about is, it seems like there has to be for avoidant men, maybe it doesn't have to be, I shouldn't say this, I shouldn't speak definitively, but often the impetus to actually change comes from pain. Yeah. And so I wanted to ask you about that, like ways in which maybe it could be less painful, but then we kind of stay shut down unless there's a sense of pain. It's like, I'm thinking of kind of an avoidant, like stereotypical avoidant male that like their wife wants them to open up, but they're happy not. They don't want to open up. Right. But the wife's need is unmet. And so I'm thinking maybe the partner just communicating, hey, my need's unmet, can start to like create an impetus for the avoidant to come out of their shell. But I wonder if you have any thoughts about that, or if you think about pain being necessary at all for... that's like actually something I've thought a lot about. I'm like, why is it that that suffering in a way can be useful? And is it the only way to grow through suffering? And I'm not sure I have an exact answer on that, but it does seem that coming in contact with our suffering and being willing to tolerate it in the right pacing and dosing, not overwhelming, but
it seems like it is an impetus for growth. I keep thinking, well, maybe love itself can be an impetus for growth too. But
I really like that. I really like it.
Yeah. But suffering does seem to come into the picture. So
in the right, so you mean the tolerable, how would you know if it's too much? Or how would a partner know that it's too much? Like the partner, like, because it's a fine line. I think a lot of people are walking of like, okay, how much do I push my partner to grow and how much do I?
Well, one of the things with the avoidant that's really important to know is they need breaks. And what you feel emotionally is normal and easy for you, it's not. It's really overwhelming for no. So what I'll do, like if I'm talking to somebody and they're in their avoidant space and like maybe, okay, let's just make up something. Like my grandmother just died or something and I'm grieving and I'm just, oh my God, and I bring that to my avoidant partner. They might just be like, not that available, just not that responsive.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Or I'm sobbing and I'm grieving, which would be natural. And I can see as that's even happening that they're just getting really overwhelmed and they're getting shut down and they're fidgeting and they're kind of like, I don't know what to do. I might say, honey, I need your support around this and I need you to hug me, but I get it that this is a lot for you. Why don't we just take a break? And why don't you go walk the dog or go hang out in nature or do whatever you love to do, throw the frisbee or whatever it is for 20, 30 minutes or how much time do you need? And then if you can come back and maybe, I need you to hold me while I cry about my grandma. Could you think about the possibility of doing that?
Soft approach.
Soft approach, but also recognizing that emotion for me might be really easy, but emotion, strong emotion, for someone else that if they're avoidant might be super overwhelming. And if you can allow breaks to happen, or if the avoidant can learn, they can say to you, and you're not going to go nuts.
Right.
They can say, honey, I get it. Your grandma just died. I'm so sorry. I know how painful it is. And I'm getting really overwhelmed. So I don't feel like I'm very helpful right now. Would it be okay with you if I just take a 15-minute break? I'm hungry. I didn't have time to eat. I just need to eat something. I need to just get outside, be in the sun for 10 minutes. I will be back. And then you have to keep the agreement. You have to come back in that 15 minutes, right?
Right.
Not just like wander off.
Set a timer if you're,
keep the agreement.
Yeah.
But even if the avoidant, and then I'm on the receiving end, they're going, okay, I get it. You need a break. It's okay. Not, I can't believe you're leaving me in my time of need.
It maintains the connection. Yeah. So, okay, we're doing this together.
But you learn how to language compassionately for each other. The avoidant learns, or even the person who's not avoidant can say to them, you can tell me when you need a break. I may not pick it up. I may not, because you were saying, how do you know?
Right,
I might not pick up that it's because you're so good at sometimes shielding. If it's too much for you, it's totally fine with me. If you ask for a break or you just say, you know what, that is way over the top for me. I don't know how to, just tell me it's okay. Just
making it okay.
Because it wasn't okay early on. So that's a new behavior, a new possibility.
And the charge gets so intense. I mean, it can be really painful, right? For the ambivalent, anxious person to hold back a little bit and allow, this separation, because our early childhood parts are really active. But
if you know the person's coming back in 15 minutes, and that agreement is kept. So it's like honoring both people's attachment injury in a way that's respectful and dignified and not blaming and open space for things to get better and better and better down the line, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, that's why I think it's important to understand how you language and how you interact with each different attachment style or wounded part. Because if I'm largely in my ambivalent space, I'm not going to understand, if I don't have the education about it, that emotion that's so comfortable for me could be so painful and overwhelming for my partner. I mean, I'm like, what's your problem? I'm just crying. My grandmother just died, for goodness sake, and they're like, and I need to get out of here. I can't get out of here fast enough, So, I mean, it's a little bit like watching The Big Bang Theory and watching Sheldon Cooper, because I've been rewatching that series, but he's sits in the avoidance space.
He's over there. Yeah. Well, and then I think it brings it up for men too. It can trigger so much shame to have this, my wife or my partner is needing something and I'm incapable. I feel incompetent. I feel inept. I don't know how to actually attend to them. And so it just can add to the overwhelm and shut down.
Right.
And
because you're in foreign territory.
Foreign territory.
That's
yeah,
where
that's a great way
the partner that's not in the foreign territory can say, honey, if you just even held my hand right now, it would make a world of difference. I had a somewhat avoidant partner, and I remember he was getting hair transplants, and it was really painful. He goes, I couldn't believe the nurse actually held my hand while this was happening, and I couldn't believe how amazingly supportive that felt. It was just so amazing.
Wow.
And so he was coming into an experience of connection. It wasn't with me, but it was,
it was maybe more safe because it was a.
But it just happened contextually in a different way.
Yeah.
But it really brought him into this awareness that was sort of new for him. Like, oh my gosh, that was so comforting. It made such a difference. And they actually have studies on this, that if you are holding someone's hand that you care about during a painful procedure, it's way less painful and way less scary.
That is so interesting.
And,
what a metaphor for life, too.
Yeah. So even if you go, and I mean, obviously you should always go with your avoidant partner to funerals. You should go to medical appointments. You should, try to be the hand-holding person in that case. There's things you can do that sort of wake up the attachment system, which you mentioned earlier, because the avoidant adjusted to the vacancy or the hatefulness or the only left brainedness of their upbringing by shutting down their attachment system. So that's linked to survival. Unconsciously, they believe deeply, their body believes deeply, that if I don't shut down my attachment system, something really bad is going to happen. And the really bad thing already happened with the vacant parent or the angry, hateful parent or the only left brain oriented parent. So, but they have to learn and take the risk of opening that up again. And that's not a small thing. So, like if the avoidant is interested in practicing some things that'll be helpful, one is approach, because they tend to feel like if they move to connection, something really awful is going to happen. Either they're going to be vacant or those things, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes they won't even make eye contact because they're used to hateful eye contact or blank eye contact. So they'll cheat and look at your chin when you're talking. Like if I look at your chin right now, you can't tell I'm not looking at you.
Because I'm attuned, I can tell. But
you can tell,
or probably because you told
generally
me.
speaking,
Normally
people can't tell.
Yeah.
So even, like because I had my mom had some problems when I was born, and she had kind of a hateful attitude towards me and looked at me that way. So what I realized as I was starting to unpack this was that it took me a while to really there was like a layer I had to get through to make eye contact with somebody, because I was defending
was
against.
Was it pain? It
was kind of a hesitation, like, checking it out and, scared a little. And I wasn't aware I was doing that till I started doing all this work. And then I realized, I'm seeing my mother's eyes before I'm seeing Daniel's eyes.
Wow, I got a body chill.
But I would see, I can still bring that image up, actually.
Whoa, that feels powerful in the room.
This kind of dark black eye thing.
Oof.
And my mom wasn't looking at me like that all the time, but it was enough when I was a baby that it made a big imprint. So, she was loving at times too. Got to give mom credit where credit is due.
Yeah.
She's had some major struggles, and then she acted them out, which was not so cool. But,
and I know you have the orientation of not always blaming the parent at all.
Yeah,
you're very pro-relationship.
I don't believe in parent bashing.
Yeah.
Because I think parents, they're humans too, and they're on a human journey, and they're usually trying to do the best they can with what they've got. But, some people do really egregious things. And so, I get that.
Some clients come and they're very guarded against any kind of therapeutic or coaching process because, everybody just demonizes the parents and then they have this attachment loyalty. So I'm glad you. No, you're also pro relationship, right? Like, kind of. It used to be, a few years ago at least, that a lot of you're always so positive with other approaches. So I've never once heard you kind of put down any other approach. So I know that that's not what you do. And you're very pro. A lot of times in therapy dynamics, you can get in this situation where the therapist just validates what's going wrong all the time. Yeah. And it can cause a split. And you have this because your mother did that or your dad did this or didn't do this. Right. It can cause this splitting. And I've so appreciated over the years your advocating for a relationship. Or even in my personal life when I've been mad at someone or something, you really are supportive of people coming together instead of more separation. I'm big on reconciliation. Well, it makes sense. Your trauma is about disconnection and healing. It's about connection. Yeah. Another question is, why do I shut down when things are going well?
If we didn't have a lot of support and a lot of enthusiasm from our parents or people close to us when things were going well, I had that too because there was jealousy in my family dynamic. So I never told anybody, especially if something was good. I was like, that was a secret because if I exposed it, my sister would slam me. It was not her fault though, because it was the environment we're in, because there was this kind of antagonistic,
like
about
safety. Everybody needs to shut down. We shut each other down.
Yeah,
it's where try to protect each other.
Or we feel compromised if somebody in the family is doing better. It's kind of weird dynamic.
I see.
So it was unsafe to, So my mom would go to these PTA meetings and she'd find out all these things that I'd done. She goes, "Why didn't you tell me? Oh my gosh, you did this and you did that and you got this award." And she would always be like, "Why aren't you telling me any of this?" Because there was a dynamic that if I said anything, it was an immediate, slam down. So I just became very private about it. But then she'd find out, usually from teachers or something, and, she'd be really surprised. But I think you have to look at what happened in my family dynamics? Or was there somebody I was close to that just either felt compromised if I did well, or if things were going good for me, they felt jealous, or if things were good for me, maybe because there wasn't a lot of enthusiasm and aliveness around when I did well, then I was encouraged to shut down.
What's this familiar from? You might ask yourself.
Yeah, where's this come from? What was it like for me early on when, I, won a race, or I won an award, or I got an A, or, anything like that.
Was I celebrated?
Was I celebrated, or was it,
did I feel
some
worse?
Some families can't tolerate the exuberance and aliveness, which kids have in spades usually, and their creativity and their joyfulness and their love and everything. Because if the parent didn't have that, they may not know what to do with it. So they have a tendency to go, "You're being too much now, sweetie. Just calm down, Stay
small.
Yes. There's an encouragement to contain. So I don't know what the dynamic would be for that particular person, but I think being curious about it, maybe journaling about it, maybe just sitting and meditating and feeling, well, when something happens where normally I'd be celebrated, or what happens in me, what am I afraid of? What do I think is going to happen if I actually don't shut down and I actually expand? I get, let myself take up space. I let myself feel joy, or, what's inside of me saying, "Ooh, if you do that, what's fill in the blank?
What's going to happen?"
And then maybe notice that that's not happening in your life anymore.
That's the big one. So what to actually do about it? Is show your nervous system another way. Yeah.
Or maybe even have someone else interview you. Ask you the same questions I'm asking right now, but sometimes it's helpful if another person's asking you. Then you can find out a little bit more. But it's a self-discovery journey on that. It'll not unlike me realizing that I deflected my husband's love. Oh, I get it. I didn't. That's foreign territory for me. I don't know what to do with it. So I'm actually hurting him by not taking it in, but I'm also hurting myself by not taking it in. Really embodying that love that's actually in my life.
There's all this unnecessary. One thing I really like that you say
suffering.
Is necessary suffering, and then there's unnecessary suffering. Right. And Diane always says, unnecessary suffering. Oh, you take it away. What's your speech? I love it.
Well, there are necessary suffering in the human condition, right? Poverty, marginalization, colonization, somebody stepping on your foot, having an injury physically. There's a lot of necessary suffering.
Death, yeah.
But there is also unnecessary suffering, kind of the way we perpetuate it, not intentionally usually, but we perpetuate it by projecting old wounds onto the present, projecting old wounds onto our partners or our coworkers or the world or life in general. That is not really there, that we could actually heal and move into a healthier space and feel better ourselves and actually be kinder.
But also in these it sounds like missed connection experiences is kind of a suffering. So instead of looking at eyes and actually having this experience with you, I could look at your mouth and be avoidant of it. And that would hurt you a little bit, maybe unconsciously, and me too. Is that I never thought about that.
Yeah, exactly. It's a
that
really good way
suffering
to say
comes
it.
from missed connect. Oh, that's very interesting.
You know, Barbara Friedrichsen did some really great research. She wrote a book, Love 2.0, and I can't remember the subtitle right now, but you can find Love 2.0. And it's about any micro moment of connection, even with a stranger, like somebody bagging your groceries, somebody at the bank, when you're cashing a check. They're kind, they've got a presence about them. To actually stop and notice it. This is really good practice for avoidant,
So
especially.
good. Yeah.
To notice, oh, there's kindness. There's that person was really made a nice joke. That was fun, and then to take the next step, like, let me take that in. Let me embody that. And
Relish.
her research is really powerful. I think everybody should read this book, actually. It's so great because she said these micro moments of connection, even if they're like really brief, they build our capacity to love and feel loved. Whether that's a stranger. I mean, people say, well, what if I'm not in a relationship? Well, a lot of people aren't in relationships.
Yeah.
You can do this whether you're in a relationship
Coffee
or not.
shop. That's like in COVID,
Anywhere.
everybody was so depressed and there was no micro moments of
that was
connection. We didn't
harder.
get at the grocery store saying hi to someone. It was,
Yeah, we lacked a lot of interaction that we normally would have had. But even going out with a mask on, walking your dog, you could have these connections.
and that's a great
like
point. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
eye contact, like, oh, hi, oh, you got a cute dog too.
Totally.
Anything like that. But the point is not to just be unconscious about it, to actually make it kind of a practice to notice and collect. And actually, another part of that is for you to send out beam gleams in your eyes, or I care about you, or kindness in the eyes, or just the way you talk or your tone of voice. That you're sending out messages of kindness and connection, and we can make that a practice. I think there's a yoga practice about that. That you see the light in everyone.
Oh yeah,
right. There's all sorts of practices.
Yeah.
But having that attitude, can really make a difference. Can really make a difference.
Yeah.
Again,
or seeing into the
hard to
neshama in Judaism, seeing into the neshama. And wow.
Yeah.
And as you're talking, I'm thinking about how this is speaking so much to what it is to really be a human.
Yeah.
Like it's foundational to who and what we are. And as we're going to this AI age, there's this, you're talking about generating these fields, sending out these signals that would be really kind of hard for a robot to do, if not impossible. And so I'm just thinking about that, like, this nature of us as humans to be, even if I'm in the house, but I see people walking by, I know I'm not as alone.
Right.
I'm tribal. Is there anything else you think about as
Another example, I remember reading this, someone wrote about this so long ago, I can't remember the source, but I remember this woman talking about, she was driving and she was going past a really serious accident. And she had this awareness to send this love to whatever the injured person was.
I do that. Yeah.
And just say, oh, I hope everything's okay, and I hope this person heals, and I hope, this gets resolved. And she had this very loving, compassionate blast, basically, that she gave both drivers that had been in this thing. And she drove by, and then somehow, I can't remember this part of the story, but somehow someone that was on the receiving end of that recognized that she had done that, and
they saw a light, or they had
I don't know. They somehow, how would they even know she's driving by? But somehow they knew it, and they said that, or maybe there was something in the paper later. The person said, "I just felt this love come at me in the middle of this accident," or I don't know where it came from, but she knew it was. Anyway,
it's very real.
Yeah. Ever since I read that, anytime I see anything like that, any injury or any car accident or anything, I just do that. I have that. It's my automatic intention now. I immediately go, oh, I hope, hope things are okay. I hope things get handled. I just send this compassion.
Sometimes I wonder if you have two hearts. Most of us have one heart, and you do that beaming so much.
It's something that it doesn't cost anything, and it takes a few seconds, and it's really powerful.
Right. It's just like there's so much. Like I notice in my life, I'm really good at generating secure attachment spaces, fields with, I've been a mentee of yours for a long time. And in my relationship with my clients. It's all over the place. But then I notice, I get so caught up. Sometimes I get in these rigid patterns. I even notice the somatic patterns of body holding it like
That's
this.
natural. We're human.
Yeah,
That's
totally.
gonna happen.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And it's really a wonderful, brilliant practice to keep coming back to, okay, how am I inside? Or like if I notice, I'm micromanaging a little bit, my wife or somebody, you should do it this way or you should do it that way. And then it's been such a helpful thing to come back and, okay, that's good feedback for me. I'm not in my heart. I'm not in my relational nervous system.
Just paying attention, bringing awareness to things is half the battle. You bring awareness, you finally realize, like when I finally realized I was deflecting love, I'm like, okay, that's not the end of the story. I have some work to do,
Yeah.
So 50% was, he's right. Darn it. He's right. And I have some homework to do about being able to tolerate love, using that word intentionally. And then I made a practice out of it to stay present whenever and to pay attention when he was being loving and maybe even to say, I really love it when you do that. And that's so sweet. Or I really feel loved when you, rub my back or whatever he was doing. I started to think I can even acknowledge and amplify my gratitude instead of just deflecting and acting like nothing, or rejecting it or something.
Oh, yeah.
Very different.
Yeah. And I think that was my point, is that there can be this layer of pain as you try to do that.
Yeah.
This real layer. And to
respect that.
And to move through it. Respect it.
That you have to go at your own pace and slowly. And maybe you decide to tell your partner what you're doing, or maybe that helps, or maybe that doesn't, or you do it, you just do it to change your own behavior. But whatever. But that we don't just, expand. We expand, contract, expand, a little more contract, expand. That's normal in the way we integrate and resolve our challenges.
Yeah, always these rhythms of expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction.
I don't know anybody that just expands
all the time.
expands.
I've had some clients come and can we just expand all the time? Like, how do I do that? No, I can't.
I've not met a person that can do that, but maybe there's.
I died. It's the universe, right? Is expanding, contracting, expanding, contracting. Right. So that kind of brings me to the next question that someone had: is how do I know if I'm actually healing? What are some tells that I'm doing the work, I'm getting better?
Well, I think it's pretty easy, because if you look at what secure attachment is, like, how comfortable are you being safe, or generating safety, or being safe, feeling safe yourself? How easy is it for you to have joy and playfulness and humor?
So it's a really clear metric.
Am I practicing healthy comings and going rituals? Am I making repair when somebody upsets me, or I do something out of attunement, which we're going to do. We're going to make mistakes, of course. But then, do I know how to repair that? Do I know how to say, hey, I didn't really like the way that conversation went, and I think I said some things that were kind of mean. Let me say this differently, or can I?
So the ability to make the repair.
Yeah, and then and I ask people when I was doing live trainings a lot. I'd ask the whole group, and these were usually therapists and professionals. How many of you had good modeling around repair in your families?
Yeah,
how many of your parents really appropriately apologized and were actually remorseful and actually tried not to do it again, to repeat the hurtful behavior. And usually only about 5% of any group would do that. So most of us need to learn it, because often we didn't have exposure to it. So if you're a little awkward about it, or you don't quite know how to do, or you feel a little reserved, like, it makes me nervous, that's normal. And just to see it, even if you make the repair and the other person doesn't respond the way you hope they'd respond, doesn't matter. You're still doing the maturation. You're still growing your capacity to initiate and hopefully also receive repair when someone's trying to repair with you. You're a little more generous about it. Maybe they don't say it exactly right, but you can feel the intention of repair happening. Maybe you wanted flowers and they brought you candy. I mean, you don't get so caught up
open to repair. It doesn't have to be the specific.
Yeah.
My red roses.
Yeah.
It's open to
daisies will do the job. So you try to be a little more generous. I mean, even if your dog, gets into the garbage and you come home from work and it's a big mess, they're going to look at you like, I know I screwed up. And they'll try to repair with you. I mean, you can either kick the dog, which I would not recommend, or you can go, okay, not a good idea. You can let the dog eventually off the hook, because they say if you throw a dog out in the yard or something, they're so social.
They're so incredibly intelligent. Oh my gosh.
That if you leave them out there and you've kind of banished them and they know you're angry at them because of the garbage or whatever, for more than 20 minutes, you're really, really hurting them. So think about how sensitive it is if you're a kid.
Yeah.
Way even more sensitive. So I think
and the whole thing with plants as well. If you talk positively to plants, they grow more scientifically.
Yeah. But even like timeouts, I don't think timeouts they don't need to not feel like banishment. Like you need to like check in, like, oh, hey, honey, I know, we're taking a little break now and you're kind of getting calmed down, but I just want to check in and see if you're okay. You can do a timeout with connection. You don't have to do a timeout with banishment.
So ideally you maintain connection.
Yeah, I think
pretty much always.
I think, sometimes people need a little long time, of course.
But there would be a thread underneath that, hey, I know I can come back to the relationship.
Yeah, and then I think the thing in my bathroom at home is, always choose kindness. And I'm like, yeah, it's good reminder. But you don't always. I'm not suggesting that we're trying to be perfect because that's not going to happen. But you can usually tell when you've gone off a little bit, and then just to have the intention of repairing it makes a gigantic difference. John Gottman does all this research on adult relationships. Incredible research. So good. But he says that if you learn how to initiate and receive repair as a couple, and I think just as a human being in the world, you have 85% more chance of sustainable well-being in your relationship. 85%. I mean, if you were getting 85% return on your money, you wouldn't even be buying Starbucks. But every penny you would go into the bank because you'd be getting 85%. If you don't take anything else away from this, you can take that, because if you learn this skill, and it's uncomfortable at the beginning, apologizing and owning your stuff is not always that comfortable. Divorces are expensive. So I would be thinking, how do I get really good at offering repair, and then how do I receive it? Yes. That's what I'm hearing you say. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Not to cut this is a really good skill to develop. And I would not say the easiest one, but a very important skill. With friends, with coworkers, in every situation. I mean, really, it's important. Yeah. So let's say I just messed up. I just did something wrong. How might you approach repair? If I had no experience with repair, maybe acknowledgement. You mean like if I made the mistake? If I made the mistake, I would just say, hey, whoever, if it's your partner, hey, honey, I realized I was really putting a lot of pressure on you about getting a job, and I realized you may not be really ready, and if there's some way I could be helpful, that'd be great. I'm happy to do that, but also I need to give you space around that. Or what do you need from me? And I know you don't need criticism. So not shame, I'm bad, I did this terrible thing, not spinning out in that, but ackngnowledgement. Just say I really feel like I mishandled that situation, or I crossed a boundary there, and I realized that's really none of my business, and that's your life, and you need to make those decisions, and I'm here to help you. I'm not here to make it harder. Yeah. Sure. So another question is, how do I stop picking people that are not good for me? Actually, Amir Levine wrote a really good book called Attached, and he talks about this. So I'm gonna go into this territory a little bit influenced by him, but also my own observation. First of all, you don't always know you're picking the wrong people. Sometimes it's your attachment system acting out. So I'm going to give a couple different examples. One, I worked with this woman in Germany, and she came into the session. She was in a training with me, and she wanted to do a session, so we did a session. And she said, I always pick the wrong people. I always pick these unavailable men. I'm in another relationship with a guy. He travels for work all the time. He's never here. I'm going to break up with him. So I'm really feeling sad because I'm going to break up with him. And I've been in a relationship with him about 2 years. I've been in a series of relationships with men about 2 years, and then I break up because they're really not available. And I just keep picking the wrong people. I said, okay. So it started to sound a lot like ambivalent attachment to me. Totally. So I said, well, tell me a little bit about your upbringing. Tell me a little bit about how it was when you were a child. And again, hallmarks of ambivalent attachment, which we haven't talked about yet. But, and so I said, well, I'm curious. I said, you've been in a relationship with this person for 2 years. There must be something he's done that's been kind in those 2 years. And she goes, no, he's just never here. He's gone all the time. And and I said, well, I'm going to hold your feet to the fire a little bit. I said, and she's kind of getting mad at me now, And I said, how dare you challenge me? I'm telling you, he's not any good, And I said, well, just hang in there with me for a minute. Is there anything he's done that's been caring in those 2 years? She, after saying no 2 or 3 times, she goes, well, and she's annoyed at this point. Yeah. Well, he calls me every night to see how my day was, even when he's out of town. And I guess that's kind of nice. I'm like, well, that's sort of sweet,
that's awesome. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And she goes, yeah. And she's kind of surprising herself.
Because
she's been not paying attention to the caring behaviors. And I said, is there anything else? And she goes, well, because he travels so much, he usually plans these 3 or 4 day weekends someplace really special so we can have this kind of condensed time together because he's gone so much. I said, well, that's kind of cool. And she's like, and she's shocking herself now. She's like, oh, I never thought of that. Wow, that's actually true. And I'm like, and then I said, well, anything else? And she said, well, he buys me stuff on these trips when he's traveling through Europe. And they're always things I really like. So I guess he's kind of paying attention to who I am. And she's, again, I just can't communicate how she's shocking herself because she has not been aware of any of these things because she's dismissed it. And that's a hallmark of ambivalent attachment injury. And then she's kind of going, wow, he is actually doing some very nice things. And she's like confused because this is not how she sees him usually. She sees him as like this guy who's never around, right? Just abandoning.
Just projection.
Projection. So then I said, okay, and here's the clincher. I said, on the table, let's pretend there's a table in front of us. I want you to put all the caring behaviors, all the affirming words, all the lovely gifts, all the nice, yummy, safe touch, whatever it is you want in your relationship. I want you to just pile it on like a big smorgasbord or a big love feast or fest or something. And she goes, oh, okay. And she's like thinking of all these things and piling up all these loving behaviors. And I said, now I'm going to ask you, I'd like you to take it in. And she goes, it's really weird. My whole body contracted, my stomach especially, I'm contracted. And I'm like, that's really interesting. And I said, it's like, there's all this good stuff, but taking in is problem because usually with ambivalent attachment, there's an unconscious inability to receive. And you can't just tell somebody that. They have to experience it. So when I set up the love fest, she experienced that she couldn't take it in. I said, so it seems like there's a little bit of a challenge with receiving. So let's just say take 1% or 1 quark or 1 atom or 1 really tiny unit of anything. 1%. And she goes, oh, I can do that. I said, okay. So, my stomach relaxes. I start to feel satisfaction, which is the corrective experience, partly for the ambivalent. And she goes, but I want more. I'm like, of course you want more. How much is enough? I mean, what's the next step? Because we don't want to do too much because we know you contract. So what's the right? I think I can do 4%. I'm like, okay, cool. She does 4%. She's still feeling satisfied. And I'm saying, and you're having this feeling of fulfillment and nothing bad is happening because in the ambivalent, they have this overcoupling that if I allow love, the next thing is abandonment. And I said, nothing bad is happening. So you have to like unhook those two ideas because they're wired into survival. And so then she goes, well, I want more. I'm like, great. Listen, she goes to 10%. And you get the picture. She gets more and more percentages and she's able to receive without constricting against it out of the fear that if something good happens, the next thing is that I get left or something bad happens. And so as she's developing her capacity to receive, which has to happen for the ambivalent attachment for them. They tend to not notice caring behaviors, even if they're happening. So you want to help them notice caring behaviors, which is the first part of the session. And the second part is, can I let it in? Right? Like I had the trouble with taking love in. So that was my barrier, right? She was having trouble with it too. But once I recognized it was me, not because typically what we do when we're in our ambivalent spaces, we're like, they're not doing it right.
It's so
I'm not
easy
taking
to point.
He's not around enough. He's not doing this or she's not doing that. And so when I because our focus is on the other person a lot anyway in ambivalent attachment. So when I recognized that I was the one deflecting love and she recognized that she wasn't noticing caring behaviors and she wasn't able to take it in.
And it's really hard for them to see it.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
You kind of have to set up a scenario ideally where they experience it because then they're like, oh, I don't know why I'm contracting. Oh my God, my stomach really hurts. And I'm like, yeah, let's understand that more, and then there's curiosity. Like you said, pain brings the curiosity, right? Yeah. And so by the end of the session, she was feeling fulfilled and satisfied and not worried about abandonment. She actually liked this guy. And she said her parting words was, oh, my boyfriend's going to be so glad that I did this session because I was ready to leave him. And now I just appreciate him so much. I have so much gratitude for all he's been doing. And I feel kind of bad. I haven't been grateful. I haven't noticed it. I haven't really acknowledged it. I've deflected it, and she goes, oh, he's going to be, and I said, also, you don't have to find another guy. You've got a good one, so not that he doesn't have any issues. He probably does, but
Absolutely.
her part. So that's the thing about picking the wrong person. It may not be picking the wrong person, but it can also be picking the wrong person.
So you really, before you just up and leave the relationship, like we're so quick to do that nowadays, ghost people, just up and leave.
Yeah.
Maybe challenge, if it's not abusive dynamic, maybe challenge. Is it myself?
Right.
Is this my projection here? Can I open to love? Yeah. That's what I'm hearing.
Yeah. Am I really seeing the caring behaviors that might actually be there?
That's a better question. Are there caring behaviors here that I'm not seeing?
Yeah. And I'm not really honoring, and I'm not grateful for or appreciating.
Yeah.
And that can be a thing. That is usually a thing with ambivalent attachment. Wow. So now it could also be that you are projecting your history in a way that you are picking really damaging or abusive or unavailable series of people, right?
Totally.
So there's ways when you're dating that you can check for, is there a desire to go to secure attachment? Is there a person already in secure attachment? Like if you text or call, or they text or call, is there responsiveness? I mean, do they get back to you within a reasonable, like not 30 seconds, but a reasonable amount of time? Because secure attachment has the one aspect of it is consistent responsiveness. That's very reinforcing for healthy attachment. Are they able to repair? Are they able to accept your repair if you make a mistake? Like say you're late for a date and you got caught in traffic or something, and they don't jump down your throat. They're okay, it's all right.
Can I ask you about that?
Yeah.
So for me, if I'm on the phone for work, I get like screen exhausted.
Yeah.
And so I just put it away for a while.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about that? Like recommendations with that, and then like getting back to people at a reasonable time? But then balancing.
Well, what I find for myself
yeah.
is I respond to text way faster than I do phone calls or
emails. You're super good with
So I just even yesterday redid my greeting on my phone to say, if you've called me, I probably won't get back to you. If you text me, I'll get back to you very quickly. If you want to reach me quicker, or I just said, don't leave a message. I actually said, don't leave a message here. Text me. And text is the preferred communication even over email, because I'm a person who doesn't check email very often. So I miss stuff all the time.
Oh, geez.
And I'm also a person who never looks at my phone. The phone call records, because I just don't do the phone call records anymore. And so I just found the other day, the reason I redid the greeting was I was going back through I just had some time and I was going back through these phone messages. I'm like, oh my gosh, I should have responded to that person. But I had it on my phone, don't leave a message here. So they set that up for themselves in a way. But however you can be communicated with is fine. And also I don't look at my phone after 3:00 in the afternoon. So if somebody writes me after 3:00, they won't get a response. Most likely.
So it's good to have a set expectation for people.
Yeah, you can tell people, or you can say, usually I've had friends that on their message machines, they'll say, I get a lot of messages. I probably won't get back to you. I'll probably get back to you within 48 to 72 hours.
Yeah.
So then people aren't taking that personally.
Yeah.
We can't be instantaneous all the time. And
I think a lot of the phones you can even customize there's a message.
Yeah, I don't know.
So maybe I'll do that. Yeah, I don't either.
Yeah, no, there's a way to do that. Yeah. I think, I don't want the pressure of having to be instantaneous. I do answer, or at least say okay, or just like a thumb or something, so the person knows I got the message. I have so many people in my life that don't respond at all, and then I'm left hanging.
That brings another point, which is ghosting. What do I do when someone ghosts me? What do you think about ghosting from an attachment perspective?
Oh, I've got a lot of things on that. Yeah. Usually, and this happens a lot if somebody's not working on themselves. If somebody's avoidant and they have this incredible evening of intimacy, like whether it's sexual or emotional or deep connection or whatever, feels really great in the moment, and then they go to sleep or they separate because it's a date or whatever, they will freak out because that level of intimacy challenges all the shutting down of the attachment system, which is instinctual until it's healed for the avoidant. So I always say for avoidant, it's like close equals ghost, and if
that's genius,
that I'm dating somebody and they tend to have an avoidant style, I will, and we have this incredible connection. I will be expecting not to hear from them for 2 weeks, because it challenges everything. And if they're working on it, you can talk about it. Or I might even say, if they're, open,
Yeah.
I might say, hey, I know we had this incredible connection tonight. I know it feels really good right now. And it might feel scary tomorrow.
Like a massive vulnerability hangover.
Yeah.
A massive tail dive. Or is it kind of a retreating into,
Yes,
okay,
both.
I need to retreat. Yeah.
There'll be a knee-jerk reaction to isolation to recover, shutting down the attachment system. But ideally, I could even say to someone that I think might do that.
Yeah.
I can say, I know we had this incredible closeness. I know we both really enjoyed it tonight, and I also know it can be scary. So if you need to take a little space after this, it's okay. But just know that
That brings another point, which is ghosting. What do I do when someone ghosts me? What do you think about ghosting from an attachment perspective?
Oh, I've got a lot of things on that. Yeah. Usually, and this happens a lot if somebody's not working on themselves. If somebody's avoidant and they have this incredible evening of intimacy, like whether it's sexual or emotional or deep connection or whatever, feels really great in the moment. And then they go to sleep or they separate because it's a date or whatever, they will freak out because that level of intimacy challenges all the shutting down of the attachment system, which is instinctual until it's healed for the avoidant. So I always say for avoidance, like close equals ghost, and if
that's genius.
That I'm dating somebody and they tend to have an avoidant style, I will, and we have this incredible connection. I will be expecting not to hear from them for 2 weeks, because it challenges everything. And if they're working on it, you can talk about it. Or I might even say, if they're, open, I might say, hey, I know we had this incredible connection tonight. I know it feels really good right now. And it might feel scary tomorrow.
Like a massive vulnerability hangover.
Yeah.
A massive tail dive. Or is it kind of a retreating into, okay, both. I need to retreat. Yeah.
There'll be a knee-jerk reaction to isolation to recover, shutting down the attachment system. But ideally, I could even say to someone that I think might do that. Yeah. I can say, I know we had this incredible closeness. I know we both really enjoyed it tonight, and I also know it can be scary. So if you need to take a little space after this, it's okay. But just know that I'm here supporting you.
And then the pain. So if I was saying that to someone, it'd be incredibly painful for me to, okay, they're going to need space, but I would try to talk to myself. I try to offer myself containment, hold myself and say, okay, they'll probably come back, or they just need space, or what might I tell myself?
Well, what you said, but also just recognizing the attachment system working,
so not seeing it personally,
not taking it like it's about me. That they,
and really letting that in. Really,
there's other dynamics, and I have to still talk to myself about not taking things personally in those kinds of relationships, because I tend to be the one that is the, I'm the connector person. I have this nickname, and I live in 2 different cities, and I have with uncrossing information, they both gave me that nickname. You're the connector. Yeah. And so I tend to be, my whole thing's about connection. So of course that's
Diane's the Oprah of therapy, psychotherapy. She really is. So.
Oh, well, maybe, I don't know. But so I still have to have these conversations with me, like, okay, this person's probably busy, or they're, got stuff going on in their family or whatever. Yeah. But, it's funny how sensitive the attachment system is. I have Stan Tacken, he's a really good friend of mine. He would always write me these emails, and he would put a colon with a parenthesis, like a smile thing at the end of every email. And I always thought that was so cool, And then he stopped doing it. And I thought, oh my gosh, what did I do? Did I offend him? Did I say something wrong? And then about 2 weeks, I'm like really struggling with this. It's so silly. Yeah. I didn't have my colon in my parentheses, Yeah. But I was really feeling this. Moment. I was feeling this insecurity about, maybe we're not friends anymore. It's the whole thing, inflated into this whole story I was telling myself. And then I get this email from him. He goes, oh, I got a new phone and I don't know how to do the smile thing at the end. And then I was like, oh my God, I was torturing myself for 2 weeks because of his stupid new phone. But thank God he wrote me. I don't know why he thought to write that, because who would even
Well,
bother.
because he's a genius, and
But he's an
maybe
attachment guy, so
yeah,
he
he's an
knows.
attachment.
But he wrote that, and I thought, he would be laughing hysterically, but also understanding it if he knew how much I was suffering over not having my colon and bread. So these little tiny things can get so easily inflated from an attachment perspective.
Yeah.
And so talk about taking something personally. I was really, going at it, And so now I just try to go, no, wait a minute, Diane, you're looking at this, you're interpreting this negatively, and it might be, you can check that out, reality test, or this might be the person is in the hospital because I got sick.
Yeah.
I didn't hear from a really good friend this week. Just this morning. And so before I came here, I just said, oh, I hope you're having a good weekend. And then they wrote back, oh, I'm having this really difficult thing with my lungs. And, I'm going to the doctor on Monday. And, and so I was like, okay, that wasn't about me.
Yeah.
It's not always about us, right?
Yeah.
That's and in a relationship, it's so easy to go there.
So easy.
It's so easy to go there. So I'm trying to teach myself to reality test or just check in and be generous about my checking in consistency. Like I have this practice and I do it every morning, 30 minutes. I text different people and check in. And if they're sick, I see how they're doing. Or if they're saying, like if one of my friends, the anniversary of her husband passing on Monday, I keep that in my calendar. And I wrote her, I said, it's got to be really hard on Monday when this happens.
Oh my gosh.
And I just, that's 30 minutes. That's the way I start my day. And so I do this connection. It's just what it's as much for me as it is for them. I feel, and I do it more than anybody does it with me. I don't care.
Yeah.
Cause I just think it's a value I have. It's important.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And if they write back, they write back. If they don't, they don't. I don't carry that with me. I just go, some of my friends are really chronic non-responders, and I know that about them and I don't take it personally. They're just busy with grandkids or they're busy with work or they don't have the same value.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I can't do it.
Yeah.
So, because my commitment is to present and be responsive. So whether somebody responds or not, I'm going to do it.
So embody the change, embody the way that you want to be. So practice it.
Like Gandhi said, right? Be the transformation you want to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I'm also hearing here is that there's so much potential in these projections, in the ways that we take things personally.
Oh, God.
That's our attachment system.
Yeah.
And so there's in methods like DARE or any of yours, you also have an attachment mastery program, which is phenomenal. It really teaches us the way that we can actually move through these projections that are everywhere. Like the social system, our attachment system is like this filter that we're constantly seeing everything through.
Yeah.
And when our relationships are in turmoil, generally that's something about us. And there's a real system part of it. Totally.
And I think the other thing that takes a lot more practice is being a little bit more stable in our core sense of self. And that takes some work too.
Yeah.
That we're not overly influenced by praise and we're not overly influenced by criticism. That we don't have giant reactions that pull us away from our core stable sense of self.
We don't get into the I'm amazing and then I'm nothing. Which is so prevalent right now.
Yeah.
So many of us have that.
So
what I'm
social
understanding
media
with
really
you,
feeds it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And what I'm understanding from you and the attachment literature is that core sense of self is developed through a secure attachment experiences.
Right.
I'm here. I have my sense of self.
Right.
I know who I am. I know who I am. I developed that through reflection.
Yeah.
Through other people.
Partly. The big part of it is that.
Yeah.
And then just really, becoming more and more your authentic self,
resting into
healing wounds.
Yeah.
So the more we dissolve those old object relations or those old identities that came from early times, we open up space for our true nature to really flourish and take up more space. So the more and more we dissolve history, history is not so relevant to who we are anymore, the more space we open up for our natural loving nature to be predominantly what's there.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. I wonder what everybody feels in their body as they hear that. Something I've gotten so much from you is that emphasis on the you of you, or you used to call it the you-ness of you,
Right.
this essential self.
Yeah.
And most of what I do, one of the main things I do with clients that seems to really work is plug people into that.
Yeah.
Reflect the you of you, see into who's really there,
Right.
reflect it, and then lo and behold, people get better.
Yeah.
You know, it's like it's magic, and it's not complicated, but it is this body to body transmission. It feels like more of a nonverbal dynamic that happens that I don't think AI could emulate.
It's really true what you're saying. And, you know, a lot of times when people start and they're in their pain or their contraction, and as they move through it, you'll notice this light just comes through their eyes and their faces and their bodies, and they just emanate this light. And that's where, you know, you're more into where their authentic self lives. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah. Beautiful. How do I find safe connection if I've never experienced it before?
That's a great question. And it kind of goes to what I was talking about earlier when I didn't know what to do with love. You know, a lot of us grew up in abusive households where safety was just like, what's that? You know, I mean, just didn't feel like it was anywhere. And it takes some work to understand that. So I'm going to give you a couple ideas about what to do, how to feel safe when safety has been just not part of your experience. One is well, first of all, usually when you're with, you know, your therapist or your friend or, you know, your spiritual teacher or whoever, or even maybe your yoga instructor, whoever it is, sometimes just acknowledging that you're not alone can be really helpful. And then just to imagine what your ideal scenario would be that might create safety for you. And sometimes our animals are really great. Like dogs can be amazing, cats sometimes, and I don't know, llamas, whatever, horses, where sometimes animals are able to communicate safe space, or you feel like you're receptive to safe space with animals. I even have had it with trees. I used to take hikes and hug trees when I was a kid. I got something from trees.
That's great. We do that. Yeah. My wife just got me doing that recently.
Yeah, I was a tree hugger, and that was where I got my sense of safety as a kid. So I didn't even, you know. So wherever it is, to see if you can notice what's difference it makes when you feel a little bit more physiologically relaxed, or a little bit more more like a sense of relief or a sense of safety, and see if you can start to build on that. And eventually it would be great if safety could include people, you know. So that's a big step sometimes for us. I know in avoidant attachment, very often avoidantly attached folks will really have love and connection and safety with their animals that they don't initially have with people. And then it's kind of like transferring it eventually to people. And you know, I was talking about
open the door with some way of feeling safe, and then you can build. You can stack on top of it. You can, okay.
And even if you go through magazines and find pictures of what you feels relaxing, like a scene of nature or whatever appeals to you, a puppy or a kitten or whatever, just even making collages of images that reflect sense of safety. I had one client who had an extra room in her house. I've never had anybody else do this, but she wallpapered the entire house, the entire room, the ceiling and all four walls with images that would help her feel safe, because she had a very unsafe history. And she would just go in there and sit and look at it and then meditate and just absorb these things from the pictures. I have another thing I recommend clients do called the bubble of connection. And that is finding images, or it could be actual family members or partners or kids or whatever, but it can also just be any image that is a resource image for you. And it's so easy to put it on your smartphone, you know, just in an album. And then whenever you're needing to ground a little bit more, feel a bit safer, to just open that and keep looking at the images and, you know, see the impact they have on you. Another one I had suggested to someone, I also always drawing something that gives you what your idea of safety is, even if you haven't the experience. Drawing can be really helpful. Sculpting, I've had people do art, music, but
tapping into something.
Because it is a real
artistic process
thing.
Yeah,
you know, it's just that we have not. It's been disowned, or it's been disconnected because of so much difficulty. We don't just give up safety for no reason, right? But to see if you can start to open those doors, and then just, if I was working with someone, I would just really milk the resource, really just keep
Absolutely.
bringing them back to it to see if this embodiment of safety.
Diane
could
coined the
increase.
term resource. And do you want to, like, a lot of times people think resource just means feeling good.
Yeah.
And that's a part of it, right?
Yeah.
But I've heard you talk about it as a more global definition of arms are a resource, agency is a resource. Could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Kind of anything that's empowering, I guess.
Yes. Yes.
Honesty, strength, will, power in a positive sense, empowerment, having a support system, love of nature, gratitude, spiritual states, all sorts of
things that help you.
Music, art, all those, dance. Yeah.
So is it things because it's not just things that help you expand.
Right.
Resources are things that help you get in touch with yourself more and what's
that you connect
make you more available.
Who you are. Yeah.
Expands your capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's the essential self that is not based on history. And the ego structure we all carry around and normal for us to have is sort of imitating the essential self, but usually with distortion. So as you work on any aspect, like I had a hockey player that was supposed to go professional, and his last game as an amateur, the other team went after him and they just took out both his knees. I mean, they were just really they just were being vengeful. It wasn't even the right way to play hockey. They just hurt this guy really bad. So he came in for a session and he, of course, was devastated. And we were talking about what he could, because he can't never play hockey again. I mean, he was just knees
his
were
whole
just
identity.
destroyed. His whole identity. Yeah. His whole everything. Because he was like this star person. It was a really horrible thing. And then we were talking about him going into coaching and all that stuff. But he and his hockey brothers, the hockey team players, it's kind of a aggressive sport, and they kind of for fun, on weekends they'd get drunk and have fights, and they were rowdy guys, rowdy guys, just guys, rowdy. Yeah. And anyway, he said that he was telling me this about them, and we had I asked him because there's a misuse of power in a sense that had happened to him.
That makes sense.
Yeah. And I said, have you ever been in a relationship? Because he grew up with 3 brothers and it was always like whoever beat each other up, whoever won the physical battle was then got their way or was the king, for that period of time. So even his
massive
childhood was,
of,
might makes right kind of thing. And it was harsh, it was
terrible.
kind of a Irish upbringing. And for some reason, that's what they were in that particular family were doing. And so I said to him, have you ever been in a relationship where it hasn't been power over like dominating somebody else and somebody's the underdog and somebody's the top dog? And he's like, no. I said, well, wait a minute. Have you ever been in a relationship where someone has authentically been empowered, but also wanted to empower you? Wanted you to have your personal power and also didn't give up their power to do that. And he thought about it. He goes, oh my gosh, my coach wants the best for me. And he's very powerful. He's this very empowered, incredible guy. And he wants the best for all of us. He wants us to succeed. He wants us to have good lives, and he thought, and I said, I just want you to feel the difference when there's an empowerment relationship versus a victim perpetrator or, a power over power or underpowered situation. And I said, it's like a completely different planet, and he goes, oh yeah. Because when I think about my coach, I start to feel strength and power, but the strength is soft and the strength is open. It's not like, fists and punching. And he goes, oh, it's so different. That's essential strength versus ego strength, which is domination, fights and all this other, overpowering. And so he moves into this essential quality of strength, and it's beautiful. He's finding a part of himself that he's like, wow, this is like gold, and he's so happy and expanded when he leaves. And he comes back the next session. And he said, after the session over the weekend, I got together with my hockey buddies and we went to the bar and they're all, drinking and, roughhousing and everything. And the guy that was my bully when I was a kid, who just, because I'm much bigger than he is now, but when I was a kid, he was much bigger and he just wiped the floor with me in school. And all my friends knew about it and they were like, oh, we can get him. He's here. We can get him. He's by himself. And I said, no. And he said, no, we don't need to do that. And he said, what's wrong with me? Nothing's wrong with you. You've actually experienced true strength. You don't need to act out that other stuff anymore.
Wow.
You've outgrown
Wow.
it. And he was
Sure.
like, wow.
How much more powerful that is than just telling someone you're dominating, you're doing it this way.
Yeah.
You show them in a gentle way. Here's another way to be in the world. And
Yeah.
wow, the nervous system takes right to it, huh?
So that would be another
Wow.
example of
Totally.
resource. His coach was
Oh,
resource.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
An empowerment
Absolutely.
resource.
Wow.
And that's a corrective experience also.
Yes.
Right?
Corrective
The
experience, also a
contradictory
resource.
experience to the negative experience.
Plugs him into
that you
essential
can actually
self.
feel in
Wow.
your body and actually become. He
Mm.
became essential strength instead of ego strength.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful work. Wow.
Yeah.
So someone's asking about social anxiety and how that's related to attachment wounding. Do you have anything to say about that?
I think social anxiety can be complicated, but I think sometimes that might be a little bit more of an issue for disorganized because threat is so interfaced with attachment and feeling like relationships are
interesting.
dangerous.
Wow.
And or you hit a certain level of intimacy, danger warnings come up because there was too much chaos or too much abusiveness or too much fear in the original relationship with either a mom or a dad or a parent or caregiver. So sometimes I think that can translate into like a social anxiety of
Like an anticipation of
yeah,
something
like
bad happening.
somebody's going to
and-
be mean, somebody's going to hurt me, somebody, and maybe it's even unconscious, but just when there's presence of other people are seen as dangerous,
Yeah.
instead of safe and welcoming and loving and
Yeah,
kind,
as you're-
It can also come up for avoidant attachment because of this idea that I'm better off alone. I'm safer in my isolation than I am with other people. So it can connect to attachment in different ways. It can even come up in a certain aspect from ambivalent attachment where there's this feeling in some people that have that adaptation, they might have an aspect of it that feels like intrusion. Like people won't respect my boundaries. I'll be intruded upon. I'll be, usurped in some way, and then abandoned. So that could break anxiety.
That makes
or
so much
fear.
sense.
Yeah.
And then you'd work with the disorganized, you'd work with it. You'd help find protection.
There's a lot you do with disorganized. First of all, you have to kind of uncouple because the attachment system wants to connect, but the threat response wants to, react to danger. So you've got two really strong instincts kind of blocking each other. So with what I tend to do with disorganized attachment is I try to find a safe place for the attachment system to land with, safer people, safer circumstances, and then work with whatever the disturbing behavior or more behaviors were that caused the person to feel like relationships were dangerous. And usually sometimes it's what their current situation is, but very often the underpinnings of it belong to earlier times with a parent. And I'll just say, well, what was the disturbing aspect of that parent, not the whole parent? Because if they have some love for that parent, we don't want to mess with that.
Disturbing aspect of the person or the caregiver.
Yeah,
okay.
the caregiver.
Yeah.
And just say, okay, so what I'd like you to do is just put that disturbing behavior, let's say of your father, as far away from you as your body needs it to be. And some people that'll be like only a few feet because they want to keep their eye on it. Other people, I had a client say it'd be the edge of the ever expanding universe,
different dimension.
Far. And so, well, that's fine, just so you can locate where that behavior is and then freeze frame it. So, because very often when people hit their unresolved trauma, it feels like it's right in their face.
Absolutely.
So giving distance will give some relief usually. And freeze framing the disturbing behavior so it can't say anything, can't do anything, can't harm the person in any way. That kind of, it's like immobilizes the threat, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So disempowers the threat.
Genius.
And you can see them like in a big block of ice or, I don't know, those old British phone booths that probably don't exist anymore due to cell phones. But, just you're immobilizing the
So
threat.
you freeze them.
Yeah,
so
freeze
then
the perpetrator or the negative behavior,
Yeah.
right? And then after that, you're saying, and what is it now your body would like to do or say now that you're older? This happened when you were little. Now that they can't hurt you. You can say whatever you want to say safely. And they might be able to say, back off or leave me alone or want to punch them in the nose or whatever they want, or have a flight response, whatever they do is fine. But they're moving from passive to active responses. So that's much more empowering than freezing or shutting down, right? Which is what we do when we're extremely overwhelmed, understandably. But we're trying to lift the freeze response or try to lift the brake on active responses. And sometimes I feel like hey, I was 2. I mean, there's nothing I can say. I'll get creamed, you know.
Yeah,
It still is
right.
very strong in their
Yeah.
body. So then I'll invite the competent protector. Like, well, if someone could be with you, or maybe even say what you need to say, but they say it for you, or they take action, or they take your parent to anger management school, or they say, you're never going to hurt this kid again, or whatever you want them to do.
Yeah.
What is it you would like them to do? Or I might even prime the pump by saying, well, I would say this, or I would
Yes.
make sure that you were safe, or,
Yeah.
so it could be you as the facilitator, or it could be something that they come up with, and you want it to be their words ultimately, but then they can watch that movie of that happening, of them seeing themselves protected, seeing the negative behavior disarmed, and then maybe after the competent protector, there's something they want to do or say to move from active
creates
to
more
passive.
space. Is the attachment, the secure experience creates more space for the body to come out of freeze, and then maybe it can complete the fight or flight. So I just want to point out that there's a really big difference between evoking completion of a self-protective response and just telling someone okay, how would it be to fight that person?
Right.
So Diane's way of working, the way that's really meaningful, it's a lot more profound, is evoking of the experience to happen. You don't tell someone to do a particular thing.
Yeah, that makes a really
just want to
big
point that out.
difference.
That's a big
because it's coming
distinction some people are
organically
doing. Yeah.
out of their experience, which is powerful, more powerful. And also, if they need help with competent protector, you do a whole thing about how you design that competent
Well,
protector.
more in your training, that's an encouragement for everybody to take any of Diane's trainings. And we're also doing a retreat together in July, which will be really fun. Attachment healing retreat. Diane's leading, and I'm helping. I'm really looking forward to it.
I'm so excited about that.
High-end luxury retreat. Oh my gosh, it's going to be amazing.
A butler.
Oh, really? Yeah, in the UK, and so you can. We'll put the link in the description, and you can message me about it if you like to
July
go.
5
We'd
to
love
12,
to have you.
Yeah.
There's only like 33 spots or something, and so I know some people signed up, and so it's probably limited space. So I'd jump on it if you're interested, or at least inquire about it. It would be so fun.
And it's for the public. It's for anyone who wants to learn more about attachment. And we're going to add a little piece on intergenerational trauma as well.
Yeah, and there's a number of really experienced somatic experiencing practitioners and attachment practitioners that are also going to help facilitate this. So it's going to be a really well-held container. And then there could be future retreats as well. So we might be doing other retreats as well. Excited. So make sure to stay tuned. And it's such a pleasure to be with you. And
thank you.
I'm so glad you agreed to come and do this. There's just so much value in this interview.
Fabulous.
Might have to break it into a couple parts because it's wow. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I really think this will help some people.
It's been really fun to talk to you, as always.
You too. Yeah, likewise.
And I'm super excited you're coming to England. And
yeah, me too. I was hoping that we could get some of how you have the mentorship dynamic. I was hoping that we could kind of bring other people into that, which I feel like we did. So I think it was
wonderful.
a successful thing.
Mentoring a lot. It's a very important piece of what we're doing.
Yes. Really you're so good. Thank you so much, Diane.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, everybody.
My pleasure.